This is Qamar Cheema, and I'm honored to have with me Lieutenant General Satish Dua. He's obviously a retired General Officer of Indian Army. He's served as a Chief of Integrated Defense Staff to the Chairman Chief of Staff Committee of the Indian Armed Forces, and he's former 15 Corps Commander in Kashmir. Thank you very much, General, for your time for NHS Media.
Thank you, Dr. Chima, for inviting me.
Thank you, sir. It's my pleasure to have you on my show. Sir, the first question which I want to ask you is that we have seen a process where India is engaging the NSAs of Central Asian countries, Chinese, Russian, for development in Afghanistan. Well, Pakistan is not part of that, where all these NSAs meeting. So, what is an Indian perspective on Afghanistan and post-US withdrawal? And what kind of a vision India has that about Afghanistan and while having Chinese, Russians, and other Central Asian countries, and even Iran. So largely, it is said that without Pakistan, having a solution for Afghanistan is not possible. So, but what is an Indian perspective on this, sir?
Look, India is engaging with Central Asian Republic. I mean, we've had very historical and traditional ties. We've had rulers come from that part of the world to our country in Middle times. So we have age-old relationship. We have very good relationship with Afghanistan. Uh, Only thing is we don't have a direct connectivity. That connectivity goes through Pakistan. But unlike Pakistan, India is also, while India is not totally in agreement or recognition of the Taliban regime in Afghanistan, yet India makes a very clear distinction between uh, Afghanistan as a country and with the given its present dispensation of government and the people of Afghanistan. Our engagement in Afghanistan has always been mostly in the realm of, in the field of helping out the people, whether it is infrastructure, whether it is medical help or educational assistance. We have even provided training facilities to the military in Afghanistan. We had them earlier and not after this regime. So what I am trying to say is that our engagement is more on humanitarian grounds, and that is how we see our relationship with them. With the Central Asian republics, now that Pakistan does not very readily give us a transit to Afghanistan, so we have to go about it in a different manner, either through the Central Asian Republic or mostly through Iran, through Chabar, and that's the route we need to follow. So as you are aware, when we were away, when we wanted to send wheat to Afghanistan through Pakistan, the Pakistan as a country did not allow us that till for quite some time, and then reluctantly a limited amount of transit was given for a limited amount quantity of wheat in terms of assistance to Afghanistan.
So, General, obviously, that is something it will take time finding a solution to that. But you have been co-commander when India did a surgical strike in 2016. So, what is your take on that? If you look at Pakistanis, they believe that that was not a surgical strike because the definition of a surgical strike is different as compared to what India terms it. And you were the co-commander in Kashmir. So some people call that as a shallow or a hollow surgical strike. So what is your take on that? And at the same time, in the same breath, I want to ask a question. Well, India has been doing a practice of going for this surgical strike to Pakistan. Even in 2019, there was a surgical strike in Balakot. What keeps India? How India keeps things in mind that all that what India is doing will not trigger a war, even if that whatever this narrative or dimension of this strike is kept for a domestic audience. So what India thinks that this will not be lead to a sort of a limited scale conflict or escalate into a war.
Look, um, you know, Pakistan I mean, there are terror groups based in Pakistan which have been creating all the violence in Jammu and Kashmir. I mean, even if you, as a Pakistani or Pakistan as a country, denies that, you cannot deny that Hizbul Mujahideen has its headquarters there, the LET has its headquarters there, the Jaish-e Mohammed has its headquarters there, and there are a few more. And terrorists are coming from that side, plus the terrorists here are getting support from that side. Now, we don't have any terrorists to send that side. So we are always on the defensive. Whenever there are actions on the LOC dynamic is like this, that there is a battle like that, and there is violence close to the LC when terrorists come, strike at us, and we even had them mauling the bodies of soldiers and then going back. So uh, if you recall, in 2016, there was also this Pathankot attack of the terror base in Pathankot air base that had taken place. There was the huge EDI building. 66 terrorists were taken hostage out on the outskirts of Srinagar. A six-storied building was occupied by a few terrorists. So, there were such high-profile terror incidents that time. And then it was decided that we will go and launch a strike at the terror camps, which are not very far from the LC, a couple of kilometers. I am obviously will not be able, would not like to disclose the exact distances, but it was uh, that the terrorist in the terror camp must be struck at. It was not against the Pakistan army guarding the LOC, and we wanted to strike at the root of terror, and that is what was done even in at Jabba Top 2.5 years later, by precision airstrikes at Jabba Top, again at a terror camp. So the purpose of these strikes was to strike back at terror wherever it may be there, which has not been done earlier in this measure. To your question that could it not did we not risk escalation into something bigger? Yes, we surely did. If we do a thing like this, we surely do. When there was Kargil intrusion in 1999, when General Musharraf was the chief, uh, that time, did you not risk a war, that there would be a war? It was, there was a risk that it will spiral out of control, it will go beyond the LC, and that was a much bigger intrusion by the army at our army post. So the point I'm trying to make, whenever you take any action like this, then you prepare yourself for consequences. But I put it to you, at the present moment, the way the internal conditions in Pakistan are, I leave it to your own sort of estimate as to where is Pakistan ready for a war.
Mm. Well, obviously, Pakistan has its own challenges. But one more quick question on this political dispensation in India. Since they have come in power, we have seen that things have moved to this scale. Well, Pakistan has its own threshold, and Pakistan has basically lowered the threshold of its nuclear program. So, how do you see that in that case? For example, Pakistan doesn't have any declared usage of nuclear weapon, or the doctrine, nuclear doctrine. But Pakistan has this perspective that if India, for example, captures its territory, India damages politically Pakistan, India damages Pakistan economically, or Pakistan's population is disturbed, is destroyed by the Indian forces. Pakistan can go for the nuclear strike. This is somehow a vague definition that has come from Pakistan. We read when we were student of politics, but right now these bold decisions which are being taken by Prime Minister Modi, do you believe there is a calculation in India that Pakistan's political and economic condition is such they can't fight a war, or do you believe that this offensive is good because that is India's legitimate right?
No, you said too many things in one question. So let me just try and break it down. Um, can this lead to a nuclear war, are you saying? But before that, whatever you told me is what Pakistan, when do you think, you said what you read as a student, when will Pakistan launch its nuclear arsenal or use it, put it into use? As I know, Pakistan will use its nuclear arsenal for an existential threat, either to the nation or to its army. But that's a huge threat. So, by striking across at a terrorist camp, we are not denting the Pakistan army, and it is not an existential threat to the country. And uh, first, let's also understand that here is a very unique situation that we have two neighboring countries. In fact, we have three. If you take China into the picture, we have three neighboring countries as which are nuclear enabled. Nowhere in the world countries share land borders with each other, and our land borders, India's land borders, with Pakistan as well as with China are unresolved borders. We have LOC and LAC; they are active borders. So, to that extent, we obviously have to be cautious that it does not escalate into anything more, uh, even in a full-fledged to a full-fledged war, let alone a nuclear confrontation.
That's fine. So, Jansab, there's a question that I was reading a literature that India, Pakistan, and China, since you mentioned, is the only place on the earth where there are three nuclear armed states. So, and we have seen, violent confrontations at the border. What do you think about that? Many people in the West or any even in our region believe that strategic stability is in danger in the region. Do you subscribe to this argument?
If you see, as a Westerner in the West or any other country, they would be justified to feel like that. Here are three countries which have unresolved borders, and all three are nuclear countries, and two can collude against one. So it's a very volatile cauldron. So we can't deny that. Between India and China, we have had a very elaborate mechanism of hotlines, military level, military to military meetings at different levels. We have a working mechanism on consultation and coordination at the MEA. In our military level talks, the diplomats are also included. We have had 22 or 23 meetings to resolve the borders. So there's an ongoing process, and there are SOPs in place. Apart, despite the fact that 2 years ago things went wrong in Ladakh, but overall we have managed to keep it under control with these mechanisms. With India and Pakistan, well, we've had skirmishes, we've had wars, and we have this ongoing proxy war, uh, where terror is being exported in Indian borders from Pakistan. But we have to ensure that this all remains under a certain threshold so that we don't go into the realm of nuclear threats.
So, Janasab, since you mentioned about the hotlines with China, but there is a hotline between India, Pakistan, DGMO, and the hotline between the Foreign Office, I think. Do you think that these hotlines they really they are good for the crisis situation, or they play a very positive role in de-escalation at times? I'm just trying to gather your perspective since you have been in the military.
So hotlines are always good. For example, sometimes there are inadvertent things that take place, which no side intends, but it may happen. So it is best to clarify a misunderstanding, or at least convince the other side that this happened inadvertently. But that there is a difference between our hotlines dynamic with Pakistan and our hotline dynamic with China. With China, we have hotlines at military to military level at several places. With Pakistan, we have a DGMO to DGMO hotline. We don't have too many mill to mill connections, and we don't have too many military to military meetings. I for one have been a strong votary of the fact that we need more of such mechanisms which can at least take care of this inadvertent errors, or which give you an avenue where you can at least lodge a protest against something that has been done, because this takes the steam out of a confrontation. But yes, I will concede that there is a system of flag level meetings, and we have several flag level meetings at all the levels. I have myself been party to some of them at different ranks in my service. So such mechanisms are required, considering the question that we discussed previously about the all three countries being nuclear powers.
So, General, in fact, it is being said that the much of the history of the world will be written in Asia, and the Americans and its Western partners are in Asia and in Indo-Pacific. India is the most important country that is an ally of the United States and a friend and ally of the United States in the region. What is an Indian reading for the region? Do you believe that uh, since the world is looking towards India, the world is looking towards Indo-Pacific, so there's going to be massive militarization of the region. So, do you think that there will be more cooperation, or do you think, in terms of economic partnerships, or in terms of supply chain, or do you think that there are chances of more confrontation among the regional states because of this Western influence or Western understanding or Western interest in Indo-Pacific?
So, firstly, you're right. I think this is the era, or this is a century of Asia. China is growing very fast, and it has an overt objective, statedly so, of replacing US as the number one superpower by 2047. And recently, it even revised the timeline, advanced the timeline. India, on the other hand, is a very fast growing economy, and in the recent years, it has started doing very well in economic growth. Uh, in fact, at present moment, last week we had our budget, and at the present moment we have um uh, a sort of recession in the economy in the world, but India's forecast, even by the IMF, shows growth. So, to that extent, India will also play a significant role. And with China and India combined, we have one third of the world's population amongst us. We have such a huge landmass. We have the two largest militaries between the two of us. So we are surely, I mean, your premise or your question or your statement that this is going to be the century of Asia is certainly correct. And I've just taken two countries. We could go on. Japan, for example, is the third largest economy. So and we could go on and on of about a few other countries as well. That being said, uh, do do I see it as confrontationist or cooperation? I personally feel that we will have more of cooperation, though presently we are going through a phase where China shows a lot of belligerence towards issues in like Taiwan, in South China Sea, at our borders with Ladakh and Arunachal, with India, and a few other issues of sort of making bases around in the Indian Ocean, and some activism in Indian Ocean. So as far as Indo-Pacific is concerned, that is the Indian Ocean, which is from the eastern coast of US to the western coast of, I beg your pardon, western coast of US to the eastern coast of Africa. There's a large, and um, uh, about 80% or a little lesser of energy needs of oil, etc., passes through this. The important sea lanes are in this, and here India is straddling a very important position. So, uh, if India is being taken as a strategic ally of US, that is because our locations and also the fact that our dispensations are both being the largest democracies. Uh, we are natural allies in that sense. Um, India is playing a larger part for these reasons, for our location, for our economy, for our own ethos of not having any expansionist or adventuristic ethos at all. Today, you see that India holds the presidency of G20. There is a clamor in the world to ask India to be on the in the UNSC as a permanent member. There's a clamor. I mean, it's not being accepted by others, but there's a loud talk about a few countries, of which India is one. So, uh, as I see with and India is also in very pole position as far as calling the shots or calling for environmental and climate issues are concerned in the world. So to that extent, I only see that this cooperation between India, US, and other allies is going to grow. Let us hope that China's belligerence does not come to blows, because if it does, that is going to be very messy. And hopefully, this should then become an era of cooperation. I would like to end this particular intervention by saying that even when India and China are having differences on the borders at the LAC over the last 2.5 years, or nearly 3 years, our trade is still our trade is actually has grown during these 3 years.
So, Johnson, the question is that does India really consider China a bigger problem as the West considers this? Because since you mentioned that you're having $125 billion, since there is $125 billion bilateral trade between both the countries. So, is China really a very big problem for India, or it is getting a problem because the other countries want it to be a problem?
No, India does not see China as a problem. I would put it this way: China perhaps wants to keep a little hold over India, or to use this border issue as a leverage when it wants to, because it fears that India is the only country that will stand up to it economically, militarily, politically, diplomatically, etc. In times to come. Uh, India has no problem with China except a border issue. Otherwise, we are doing trade very well. So our borders is something that just need resolution. Two large countries, nuclear countries, can sit down and resolve borders. It's a matter of few kilometers here and there, and we can sit down and resolve the LAC. And like I told you earlier, 23 efforts have been made in the past over decades, but they have not. China has been dragging its feet, and I just told you the reason, or as to my reading as to why they're doing it.
Okay, obviously, this is the situation is developing in the region, and particularly because of this balloon presence into the
Yes.
American space, the Chinese have come up as it seems that the presence in the American airspace is a real problem,
Yes.
and this surveillance mechanism they're establishing around the world, obviously, is a challenge for all the countries. We don't know how many balloons are there in the world. Or maybe some are in Asia. We heard there is one in Latin America. There was one in the North America. So let's see that if how much cooperation or confrontation will keep on going in the region, particularly Indo-Pacific. But the developing situation obviously is alarming. It's good that there's a cooperation, but there are chances of confrontation as well. Thank you very much, Lieutenant General Satish, to us, sir, for your time with me, sir.
Thank you, Kamar.